Hello and welcome to Gefet Gemara. I'm Yael Shimoni, bringing to you together with Hadran and Yeshivat Drisha, learning Iyun and your Daf Yomi. And on Shabbos we're going to start a new parak, the fourth parak, Echad Dine Mamonot ve'Echad Dine Nefashot, very interesting parak, which has a lot of important things dealing with the entirety of how you deal with being a judge and the idea of Sanhedrin in general. And what we're going to deal with today is a very important question that arises in these dayanim. How do you judge a case that is untrustworthy? Something there is fishy. How do you deal with that as a dayan? So here in Daf Lamed Beis, we'll see very interesting machloket, and B'ezrat Hashem will also meet things that the Rosh has said, which are very, very, very important. I hope you'll enjoy the Gefet today. I think it's short and really important for your learning of Sanhedrin. So let's begin. We'll start from the Mishnah. The first sentence in the Mishnah says, "Echad din mamonot ve'echad din nefashot b'drisha v'chakira, sheneimar mishpat echad yeh lachem." The Mishnah starts by saying that din mamonot and nefashot have the same rule of questioning the people who are involved to make sure that they're saying the truth. And we learn that from the pasuk, mishpat echad yeh lachem, one mishpat, one judgment you'll have for everything, nefashot and mamonot. And then there are all kinds of differences, like 3 for mamonot, much more for nefashot, 23 or 71, and etc. You see, it's a long Mishnah. But the Gemara asks on the beginning of the Mishnah, is this really true? Because we see other Mishnahot that say that it sounds like dinei mamonot, you don't have to do drisha v'chakira. The Gemara asks, dinei mamonot mi ba'inan drisha v'chakira, and is asking an Uri Minhu, a different Mishnah that sounds from that Mishnah that there's no need for dinei mamonot. For drisha v'chakira, it's a Mishnah that talks about shtarot. So the sugya is, this can't work. The Mishnah says you have to do drisha v'chakira, you have to check the dayanim, you have to cross-examine them when you're doing dinei mamonot. And there's another Mishnah that sounds from it that you don't have to. How will we resolve this problem? Rabbi Chanina says, דבר תורה, אחד דיני ממונות ואחד דיני נפשות בדרישה וחקירה, שנאמר משפט אחד יהיה לכם, ומה טעם אמרו דיני ממונות לא באינן דרישה וחקירה? כדי שלא תנדעת לפני לווין. So Rabbi Chanina says, both of the Mishnah are true. One, our Mishnah is describing the situation in the first place from the Torah. But then Chazal saw that there's a problem. People who give loans, according to Torah rule, if you give a loan, you can't take any rebate on that loan, so you can't make any profits from it, and you're risking your money with nothing in return. And if you don't really give good protection for those who are giving their money for a loan, and you're not helping them take their situation to court, then they'll say, if Chazal aren't there to protect my money, I won't do this in the first place. I will not give a loan. And that's why Chazal have to change the rules when it comes to loans and say, we deal with this differently in order to help people take their case to justice in case of a loan. And that's why you won't cross-examine in Hodot Valvot, but that's really Gzerat the Rabbanan, something that the Rabbanan changed. The sugya wonders about this and says, this will not really create a solution, because people, will they be willing to leave cross-examination in the case of Hodot Valvot? Maybe the Chachamim will not do the right ruling. Maybe if they make a mistake, they won't pay back the people. That will not help the problem. And here we have two different Amoraim that give a different answer. Rava and Rav Papa. Rava says, well, you have to understand there are different kinds of dinei mamonot. There are loans, and there indeed you don't have to cross-examine. And there are knesot. If somebody hurt me and he has to pay extra because of the din of the Torah, for example, he stole and he has to pay double, or he was a chovel. So there, you're not afraid people won't come to court, because this whole situation is something nobody wanted. Of course, they'll come to court because they didn't want this in the first place. But loans, you have to have the sides make a decision, and that's why you're more afraid. If you won't give them the kind of law you want, they won't come to court in the first place, and then they won't give loans at all. That's what Rava offers. This doesn't really solve the problem that the sugya raised. And we have Rav Papa. And he gives a different answer that seems to solve the problem. The Papa says, both of them are right. Sometimes in Hodot Valvot, you cross-examine, and sometimes you don't. When do you cross-examine, when don't you? Kan bedin merume, you cross-examine if you are thinking that something is fishy, untrustworthy, there's a rama'ut here. Kan bedin lo merume, if it seems that the people are really righteous and fine and normal and everything seems to be correct, you won't go into this extra detail. You won't add biocracy when it's not needed. But if you're smelling something wrong, then you'll add the biocracy. And the Gemara says, Resh Lakish also said that. Resh Lakish took two psukim. One pasuk says, B'tzedek tishpot amitecha. The other pasuk says, Tzedek tzedek tirdof. Resh Lakish asks, why one time we say one time tzedek, justice, and another pasuk says twice the word justice, because when you double justice, that's cross-examination. That's sometimes bedin merumeh, when it's untrustworthy. But if it's really a regular case and you don't have a reason to feel that something is fishy, without even cross-examination, you'll get the justice that you need. This is the Gemara up till now. But the Rishonim ask themselves an interesting question. What kind of din is a din merume? So let's begin with Rashi. Rashi here says, what's fishy in the din? Where will the dayan see the problem? So Rashi says two answers. Either bedin mekirim b'toveh hazeh shehu ramai, the person who's coming to court, they know that he had a history of being unfaithful and loyal and problematic. So then they'll do cross-examination. Or מבינים טענת רמאי בדבריו. Something while he's describing the case and what he thinks, you hear that something's wrong with what he's saying. Then they'll start investigating much more. So Rashi here gives two different kinds of problems that the dayan might feel when he's listening to the person who's talking, either because of who he is or because of what he's saying. And that is when he will re-examine and check and do a very serious examination because he feels something is fishy. Tosafot on the sugya asks a question, and he says, wait a minute, there's a different sugya in Shavuot, that there seems to be a different din. Let's read the Tosafot. לא שיודעים בו שהוא מרומה, ואם כן אין לדונו כלל, כדי שנינן בפרק שבועת העדות מדבר שקר תרחק. Let's open the Gemara that the Tosafot is talking about. Okay, the Gemara in Masechet Shavuot Daf Lamed Amud Bes and Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph says, here, let's read this together. מניין לדיין שיודע בדין שהוא מרומה, שלא יאמר, הואיל והעדים מעידים, אחתכנו ויהיה קולה תלוי בצוואר העדים. תלמוד לומר מדבר שקר תרחק. Okay, the Gemara here says, if you're a dayan and you feel that the din is untrustworthy and you know that the din is untrustworthy, don't continue and give up sack because you have eidim and say, oh, it's the eidim's fault. No. מדבר שקר תרחק. Don't do a din at all. And Rashi here in the sugya says that how do you know if something is fishy? If you hear that the eidim are saying something which is strange. So Tosafot, we'll go back to the Tosafot in our sugya, says, wait a minute. In Shavuot, it said that if you have a din merumeh, an untrustworthy din, you don't do din. You just leave it. You go. You're mistalek from din. And here it says, Dafka, you dive into it. You check it out. How could this be? Tosafot says, well, in Shavuot, says that Tosafot, it talks about when you're sure there's something wrong. Here, you're talking about a situation that you're not sure. There's only a bit of something fishy. So the Tosafot showed us that there's a contradiction, supposedly, but he says, no, there's a simple answer. In Shavuot, it's totally wrong. It's 100% problematic. Here, maybe it's 10% problematic. It's just the beginning of a sensing that something is wrong. What does Rashi think? Did Rashi asked this question. So we saw that Rashi gave a different explanation of what is a din meume. When he spoke in Shavuot, he talked about a problem with the eating. When he spoke in Sanhedrin, he talked about a problem with the person who is coming as one of the sides of the din. Maybe Rashi has a different chiluk. Maybe he thinks that if you suspect the Baal Din, then you cross-examine him, but if you're suspecting the Eidim, you have to leave the Din. Rashi is unclear because Rashi might be just commentating of what's in the specific sugya and not giving this overall view that Tosafot does. But Tosafot gave an easy answer, and the Rambam in Masechet Sanhedrin Perek Chavdaled, a very, very famous Rambam, also addresses this question and gives an answer which is similar to Tosafot, but maybe slightly different, or maybe just a different way of expressing what Tosafot said. Let's read the Rambam. The Rambam begins by quoting the sugya in Shavuot. מניין לדיין שיודע בדין שהוא מרומה, שלא יאמר אחתכם וביאה כל ההר תלוי בצוואר הדין, תלמוד לומר מדבר שקר תרחק. That's the beginning of the sugya in Shavuot. But then he continues, כיצד יעשה? ידרוש פה ויחקור הרבה בדרישה וחקירה של דיני נפשות. אם נראה לו לפי דעתו שיש בו רמאות, או שאין דעתו סומכת על העדים, או שבעל דין זה רמאי, או שנראה לו מכלל הדברים. The Rambam here gives a whole list of fishiness, and he says, if anything like this sounds to you, you have to cross-examine. And then at the end, the Rambam says, אסור לו לחתוך אותו הדין, אלא יסלק עצמו בדין זה, וידיינו מי שליבו שלם בדבר, והרי הדברים מסורים ללב. So what did the Rambam do? Rambam described Sanhedrin and Shavuot as two stages. The din is, if you reach an untrustworthy din, you have to leave it. You have to leave it, not to judge it at all. How do you know if you reach that? You cross-examine, you check. You have a suspicion. That's what's described in Sanhedrin. Then you do as much examination as you can. And if you still feel that your heart is not certain and that something is wrong here, leave the din. And that's how you go to Shavuot. So these two sugyot are not giving different situations. It's not that here I suspected a little and here I'm suspecting a lot. The Rambam says, whenever you suspect, you must check. And then you'll see if you got to a higher suspicion, and then you'll leave the din. So that's the Rambam here. The Rosh on the sugya, and here is a real recommendation for you in Masechet Sanhedrin to read the Rosh. He's in the back of the Masechta, Rosh Masechtot. He's wonderful, he's short, he's clear, he gives you things for halacha. You won't be sorry. Try it. Well, the Rosh here in the sugya says, אמר רב פאפא, לא קשיא, כאן בדין מרומה וכאן בדין שלא מרומה. והד אמרינן בפרק שבועת העדות דבדין מרומה אין עדונו כלל, שהוא נכתיב מדבר שקר תרחק. So here, the Rosh is asking the same question of the Tosafot. There's a stira between the two sugiyot, and his answer is different. תרץ רבנו מאיר, דהיינו, כשתובע טוען ברמאות, אז יסתלק הדיין ולא ישמע טענותיו. והחמרת שהנתבע טוען ברמאות. אין יכול הדיין להסתלק שלא יסתכל הרמאי ברמאותו, אלא ידרוש ויחקור יפה לבטל רמאותו. So here we have a different teretz. According to the Rosh, according to Rabbeinu Meir, it depends who's the one you suspect. If you're suspecting the prosecutor, the person who comes to court and begins and says, let's give me as an example. Somebody comes to me and says, I'll see you in court, you owe me $1 million. And I go to court and I say, listen, this is out of nowhere. And the judge is asking him, why do you think you owes you $1 million? And he hears that he's a liar. So then, says Rabbeinu Meir, that's when you just leave it. You just leave it. Because there's no reason to listen to this person who's a total liar. He started this and nothing really started here. You leave everything. That's Masechet Shavuot. What does it talk about Sanhedrin? Sanhedrin is when I really lended somebody $1 million and then he's not paying me. And I come to court and I say, listen, this person is not paying me back. And then the court asks him what's happening and they feel that he's a liar. Now here the court can't leave this. Because if they will, I'll be hurt. Leaving this will create of wrongness. In the first situation, not doing any deen will not create wrongness because nothing befallen is true in the whole story. Here, the story is true, but the other person is lying, so just leaving it will just create a greater wrong. And this is when, says Rabbanit Yael, that's when the judges have to dive in because they cannot leave this just and walk away. So this chiluk of Rabbanit Yael gives a totally different picture of how to deal with these different sugiyot. It depends on who's the one you suspect lying. And if we continue looking at different tshuvot of the Rosh, we'll see that he took Rabbanit Yael very seriously, and he was posking according to him, but he also took it one stage further. The shoot of the Rosh in class Masechet Sanhedrin says, in the case of somebody is coming up to me and forcefully saying that I owe him money, do the judge just walk away? So the Rosh says it's not enough to walk away. Let's see what he says. וכן אני עושה, כשמביאים לפניי שטרות ישנים אני חוקר ודורש להוציא הדין לאמיתו. ואם אני רואה באומדנה דמוכח שהדין מרומה ושקר, אני אומר שאין לשום דיין מישראל להשתדל בדין זה, ואני כותב וחותם ונותן ביד הנתבע. The Rosh says, if I think that the whole story is false because the persecutor is the one at fault, I will write the one who was persecuted a note to say that if this person will approach him again in any different court trying to take the money out of him anywhere else, that nobody should be doing a din here. Because the Rosh says, I don't want this person to keep running after Yael all her life. If he's at fault, I won't just walk away. I'll give Yael the power to say to any other court, this is not a din. So this is one thing that the Rosh is doing, which is more than what Rabbanit Yael really said. Okay, we won't even allow anyone to judge. This is also not like the Rambam, because the Rambam said, well, if you're not sure, leave it to someone else. The Rosh says, no, if I'm sure somebody's lying, if the liar is the persecutor, I won't allow anybody else to do a din here. I'll say this is something that cannot be discussed at all. And what do you do if I persecute and I have a true story and the other side is not answering, not cooperating, seems to be lying? As we saw, you can't walk away, you have to examine. But what happens if you don't get straight answers? So the Rosh in Klal Kuf Zayin Siman Vav, it's a very, very interesting story. You can read there, it's really a story of a lot of money that somebody took away from many people, including the queen of one of the countries in Europe, and the Rosh was involved. And this person was being prosecuted, and he was not cooperating. And there the Rosh is saying, what do we do if somebody doesn't cooperate? אם אינו רוצה להשיב, הוא מכסה ומעלים דבריו ומשין תשובות גנובות כדי שלא יוכל הדיין לעמוד על אמיתת הדין, מה יעשה הדיין? לזכותו אי אפשר. The Rosh says, we can't let this person go. If somebody's not cooperating, we won't say, okay, fine. Go back to your home because you're not cooperating. Why? Well, the Rosh says, because כי אז זה זכות. If you leave the din, he won. So what do you do? ועל זה נאמר, אין לדיין אלא מה שעיניו רואות. וכיוון שנראה לדיין, שאם היה זה משיב על שאלתו היה דבר מתברר, והוא לא רוצה לשתף פעולה, ורשאי דיין מומחה לדון באומדנה דמוכח כזה. Says the Rosh, if somebody is not cooperating, and he seems to be lying, seems to be hiding, and you're pretty sure that if he would have said the truth, he would have found out that he is definitely at fault, then the dayan can actually say that he's chayev. Even though the dayan cannot prove it, that's umdena demuchach. It's pretty clear that he's chayev. And says the Rosh, you have to make him pay even if you can't prove it because you're pretty sure that he's definitely at fault. Now, how can this be? How can you take out money from somebody because you're pretty sure that he's at fault? Says the Rosh, היינו תאמה, דכיוון שבא הדין לפני הדיין, הוא לא יכול לדבר על דבר, אינו רשאי למשוך ידו מן הדין. והריבו בעלי דין נמצאים זה. וכתיב באמת משפט בשלום, ועל ידי המשפט יש שלום בעולם, לכן נתנו כוח לדיין לשפוט ולעשות מה שירצה אף בלא טעם וראיה כדי לתת שלום בעולם. Says the Rosh, Justice is not only about truth, it's also about peace. Peace in the sense that you have to have a functioning society. And if you will not force this person to pay and tell him either you cooperate or you pay everything, what will happen? He will win. He will just do it again. And you're not creating shalom, you're creating riv in the world. You're creating avid. And as a dayan, you don't only care about the truth. It's true you can't prove that he's chayav, but you cannot let him get away with this, and that's why you are allowed using umdana demucha, that you're pretty sure that he's right, to force him to pay. So this is a very interesting shita of the Rosh. You use your judgment, no proof. If a person does not give you proof and he's hiding, you can still judge him. You don't walk away, like what the Rambam is saying. No, you dive in and you're making him pay, even if you can't prove that he's chayav. So that's the shita of the Rosh. Let's sum up what we saw today. There's a contradiction between, seemingly a contradiction between Shvuot Lamed and Sanhedrin Lamed. Sanhedrin Lamed says, if you think that something is wrong, dive in, check it out. And Schwartz, it says, if you feel something is wrong, walk away. So what do? Do you walk away or do you dive in? Tosafot said it depends. If you feel that something is totally wrong, you walk away. If you feel there's just something fishy, you dive in. And according to the Rambam, it sounds as if these are two stages. First, you dive in. Then, if you feel that it's really wrong, you walk away. And Rashi was unclear. Maybe he's also in this same group with the Tosafot and the Rambam. But Rabbanit Yael in the Rosh says something totally different. It depends who's the liar. Who are you suspecting in line? If you suspect the prosecutor, then you walk away. That's your. But if you suspect the one who's being prosecuted and that he is, in fact, chayav, only he's fooling around, then you dive in and you are mechayev him. That's the Rosh according to Rabbanit Yael. But we also saw that the Rosh never leaves something open. If the prosecutor is lying, he will give the one prosecuted a note claiming that no one else can actually deal with this. Nobody else can judge this case because this case is a total lie. He won't leave it open. And if the liar is the one being persecuted, he won't leave it open also. He will just judge him according to his judgment. No proof. Because you have to do shalom in the world. And that seems to be a machloket with the Rambam that says when you walk away, you leave it open. So the Rosh leaves nothing open. He leaves everything closed. Because according to the Rosh, this is not only about MS. It's also about shalom. And shalom means to have a functioning, healthy society and not having a dayan helping somebody who is at wrong and also fooling around in court just walk away and do nothing, and also not allowing people who are haunting other people in court to continue abusing the court and making things wrong with the din. The din has to stop wrongness, even if it cannot hold by the standard of truth, according to the Rosh. Okay, so I am very excited to share these Rosh with you. I think he's very, very special. And Bezat Hashem, I hope you enjoyed this Gefet and continue learning Sanhedrin, and we'll keep learning together and meet again soon. Take care.